Hi, this is Annie with Wildflower and Stitch. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make this very cute White Hawthorn Blossom granny square. The White Hawthorn Blossom is the state flower of Missouri, and this granny square is part of my state flower granny square project. Two things before we get started. First of all, this is an easy intermediate level tutorial. So if you know some basic crochet stitches and techniques, you've maybe made granny squares in the past, I'm sure you can follow along with this tutorial. However, if you're very new to crochet, I would recommend you start with one of my beginner-friendly tutorials to learn those basics first. A second thing to mention is that this is my original design, and you are more than welcome to use the squares that you make with this tutorial in any of your crochet projects. I just ask that you give me credit for the design, and I will include super simple instructions in the description of this video on how you can do that. To make this granny square, you are going to need yarn. I am using 4 different colors for my granny squares. So I'm using 2 colors for the White Hawthorn Blossom. And then I have these leaves around it. And then I have this separate border color. But you could, of course, do the background all in one color too, if I wanted to. So whatever floats your boat. The yarn that I'm using is this Hobbii Rainbow 88 yarn. It's a 100% cotton yarn, and it's a number 3 lightweight yarn. And with this yarn and with my tension, this square ends up being about 4 by 4 inches. You're also going to need a crochet hook, one that matches the yarn weight that you picked, a yarn needle for weaving in your ends, and a pair of scissors. We are going to start our granny square from the middle. So we're first going to work the center of the flower. So go ahead and pick whatever color you want to use for the center. And I'm going to start my square with a slip knot. So I make a slip knot, I put it on my hook, and I chain 4 stitches. Four stitches, and then I slip stitch here into that very first stitch to bring this together into a circle. Now, if you have a different way that you prefer to use to start your granny squares, you can of course use your way. So I slip stitch there to close that circle, and then I chain 1 stitch. And now for the center of the flower, I am going to need 10 single crochet stitches around the circle that I just created. And this chain 1 that I chained here after I made this circle, I'm going to count that chain 1 as one of my single crochets. So I need 9 actual single crochets. So I'll just go ahead, insert my hook in the very middle of the circle, pull the yarn through, yarn over and pull through 2. It's my first actual single crochet. Insert in the middle, pull the yarn through, yarn over and pull through 2. Now I know that a lot of people don't count that chain 1 there as anything. You can absolutely do this your way as well. The only important thing is going to be that when we create all of our stitches around this ring, we will have 10 stitches on the outside that we're gonna work our next round into. I'm gonna show you here in just a minute how I count my stitches. Let's see, I lost count there, how many I got so far. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And in this case, I'm also going to count this loop that's currently on my hook as one of those stitches. So I currently have 9, so I need one more. All right, so what I've done here so far is I chained 1, then I worked 9 single crochet stitches around this ring, and that chain 1 there counts as one of my single crochets, so I have 10 in total. If you don't count that single crochet as anything, again, feel free to do it your way, okay? And then I close this round by slip stitching there into that first stitch there on the outside edge. And I chain 1, and then I can fasten off. All right, so again, make sure that you have 10 stitches here on the outside that you plan to work into for our next round. I am going to use this stitch here, it's the last one here, as well as this stitch that I just slip stitched into. Both of these stitches are going to count as stitches for this next round for me. So again, if you do it slightly differently, totally fine, as long as you have your 10 stitches that you plan to work into. All right, we are going to start to work on the petals. And for this granny square, we are going to make 5 3D petals. So the White Hawthorn Blossom really nicely stands out from our granny square. So go ahead and grab the color you're going to use for the petals, and we're going to attach our yarn. I'm going to attach mine with a slip knot. I put it on my hook, and then I go into one of these stitches. Remember, we double checked that we have 10 stitches on the outside that we're gonna work into for this round. So I'll just go ahead and attach my yarn into one of these. I'm using my weaving as you go method, so I'm attaching it here where I have this previous yarn end. I'm not going to explain that method here in detail, but I will link to a separate tutorial in the description if you want to take a look. All right, so I attach my yarn there. I'm going to pull that yarn end tight. And I'm ready to start my first petal right here. And I'm going to start by chaining 3. 1, 2, 3. And then I am going to work 3 treble crochet stitches into the next stitch here on the outside. So I have the yarn attached here. I move on to the next stitch here and work 3 treble crochets into that stitch. So yarn over twice for treble crochet, insert in the stitch, bring the yarn through, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and yarn over, pull through 2. That's my first treble crochet. I'll make 2 more. Yarn over twice, insert in the same stitch, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and yarn over, pull through 2. 2 treble crochets. 1 more. Yarn over twice, insert in the same stitch, pull the yarn through, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and yarn over, pull through 2. Then I'm going to chain 3 stitches again. 1, 2, 3. And now I slip stitch this into the next stitch here on the outside edge. So not where I have these 3 treble crochets, but into the next one. Slip stitch right there. And this completes my very first petal. Let's make another one. So I chain 3 right from the spot. So where I slip stitched that previous chain 3, I chain 3 right from the same spot. And then I work 3 treble crochets into the next stitch. So not where I have this chain 3, but into the next one. So 3 treble crochet stitches. One more treble crochet. So I have 3 treble crochets in that same stitch. And then I'm going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to slip stitch this one into the next stitch here on the outside. So slip stitch right there. Oops, it almost escaped. Let's get it back. Okay, I'm gonna do this again. So chain 3 and then slip stitch into the next stitch. There we go. And there is my second petal. And now I will just start my third petal right from this spot. So I chain 3 and then I'll work 3 treble crochets into the next stitch. And this is how I work all around the center of the flower. So all of these 5 petals are exactly the same way. So if you need to see again how we made the petals, feel free to rewind and go back here and see how we made these 2 and make the rest of the petals exactly the same way. And once you have worked all 5, meet me back here. All right, I have completed my 5 petals, almost. I still need to close this one. So I have my 3 treble crochets there, and then I chained 3 for the last petal. And now I'm going to slip stitch this into the very same stitch where we first started the round. So where I attached the yarn and chained the initial chain 3, I'm just gonna go straight into the same stitch and slip stitch there to close my round. And there is my white hawthorn flower. And next we are going to crochet the square around it, and to make that part easier we are going to be adding loops of chain stitches behind these petals. So we're going to make one more round with this color and make those loops. In the final version we will not see the loops because they will get covered up with the background color, but one more round with this one. And we will start right from here where we closed this previous round, the last petal. And I'm gonna pull these petals apart a little bit because I need to get in between them. And I'm going to start by chaining 4 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. And now I'm going to secure this loop between these 2 petals here. So the loop starts from here, it goes over that petal on the back side, and I secure it right here. And for me, to secure these loops, I like to pick up 2 stitches, so one from each one of these petals, to make this sturdy. Otherwise, I find that if I only pick up 1 loop, it will pull the loop too much, but 2 makes it nice and sturdy. And I slip stitch right there. Let's make another one. So chain 4, the loop goes over that petal, and I secure it here, right between these 2 petals. So I pick up 1 loop from each side, and just grab that yarn and pull it through, and pull it through the loop on my hook. We need 3 more. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and we secure it. I pick up 1 stitch here and 1 stitch on the other side. One, 2, 3, 4, and secure it. And the last loop, chain 4. And here this looks a little different, but I do the same thing here as I did with the previous ones. So I pick up 1 stitch from this petal and then another one from the other one. The other one is here sort of on top where this first loop starts. Of course, if you find a different spot where you prefer to slip stitch these loops into, feel free to do it your way. There we go. And then I still go to the start of this first loop and slip stitch there to make it extra secure and sturdy. And I chain 1. And then I can fasten off this color. Here we go. All right, next we're going to bring in our background color. I'm using 2 different colors for the background. So now the next 2 rounds I'll be making with this army green color. And then the last 2 rounds I make with this different color for the border. But of course you can do however you like, or however you like to use your colors for the background. And we are going to attach the background color into one of those loops we just made. So again, I attach my yarn with a slip knot. And I attach it right here in the beginning of one of these loops. Doesn't really matter which one. I'm using my weaving as you go method, so I'm attaching it right here where I have the previous yarn end. So we attach our yarn. And we pull that yarn end tight. There it is. And we chain 2. And now I mentioned before that we are going to end up covering up those loops with the background color. And that is exactly what we're going to be doing with this round. So with this round, we are working 8 half double crochet stitches into each one of those loops. And these half double crochets, well, first of all, they're going to cover up those loops, so we're not going to see them in the final granny square. Looks really neat, like this. But the main purpose of these stitches is that we have a good base for making the square around the flower. So especially when we have a flower that has 5 petals on a square that has 4 sides, we need to have a certain amount of stitches or a certain number of stitches as a base for that square part. So before we can start working on the square, we work 8 half double crochet stitches into each one of these loops. So I'm here, I just chain 2 after I attach my yarn, and that chain 2 is going to count as my first half double crochet. So I need 7 more half double crochet stitches into this loop. There's my first one. So for half double crochet, we just go yarn over, insert in the space, bring the yarn through, yarn over and pull through 3. So 8 half double crochets, and this first one is going to have that chain 2 that also counts as one of these half double crochets. Let's see how many I got. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay, I have my 8 half double crochets there, including that initial chain 2. So now I'm going to move on to the next one. You can fold your petals down if they are on the way. They're going to be absolutely fine once you fold them back. So don't be scared of doing that. All right, so yarn over, and I just go straight into that space. Bring the yarn through, yarn over, and pull through 3. So I don't do anything in between the loops. I just go straight into the next loop and work my first half double crochet there. Oops, my yarn split there. Let's do that one again. Here we go. So this is how I work all around my White Hawthorn flower. So feel free to go ahead and work all around yours. Double check that you have your 8 half double crochets in each one of those loops because that's going to be important for our next round. So work all around and then meet me back here. All right, I have worked all around those loops, and now I'm ready to close this round. And here I like to go, remember how we started with that chain 2 for a half double crochet. I like to go into that second stitch. So 1, 2, into that second chain stitch there, and I slip stitch there. All right, and now I have decided for this granny square to place the flower on the square so that it's sort of sitting straight in the middle. So we have this one petal here in the middle of that side, and then we have these 2 petals here on the other side. And to be able to do that, we need to start our next round at a very specific spot. So we're going to be making a couple of slip stitches here to get to the right place. And I want to start my square or my next round to make the square in the stitch number 6, counting from this spot. So counting from where these 2 petals come together, I'm going to count to 6 from here, and that's where I start my square. And I'm just going to show you here how I count the stitches. So this one here is the stitch that's sitting right on top of this one here. So the last stitch on that loop is this one. And if I move on to this one here, it's sitting on top of the stitch that's on the next loop. So I want to start counting from the first stitch on this loop, which is this one. So the stitch that sits right and on top of this one. So I count from here to 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And since I'm currently here, I'm going to need 2 slip stitches to get to that spot. So I just go straight into the next stitch under these 2 top loops here, and I slip stitch there. And I go into the next one, and I slip stitch there. So I'm now in the stitch number 6. And now if I look here on the other side, so this is where I'm currently at. I still have 1 and 2 stitches in this loop. And then this one will count as the first stitch for that side. So do double check that you still have 8 stitches in this loop, because sometimes when we slip stitch, it's definitely happened to me before that I slip stitch too far, or anything like that can happen. So make sure that you have your 8 stitches, because that's what allows us to create the square. And I'm going to start here by making my very first corner of the granny square. So I chain 2 stitches, which is going to count as my first double crochet. If you prefer to chain 3 for a double crochet, as always, feel free to do it your way. But I chain 2 for double crochet here. And then I work 2 more double crochet stitches into this very same stitch. So the same stitch where I slip stitch into, I work 2 more double crochet stitches. There we go. This is my first cluster for my first corner. I'm going to chain 2 for the corner, and then I will skip the next stitch here. I'll skip this one. I go into the second stitch counting from here, and I work 3 double crochets into that stitch. So skip, go into the next one, and 3 double crochet stitches. There we go, and that's my first corner. Now for the side, I'm going to create a cluster of half double crochets. But before that cluster, I'm going to skip 3 stitches. 1, 2, 3. I go into the 4th stitch and I work 3 half double crochet stitches into that stitch. So 3 half double crochet stitches for the side. And then I'm going to skip the next 3 stitches again, and in the stitch number 4 I'm going to start my next corner. So skip, 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 stitch number 4, 3 double crochets. So for the corner clusters we use double crochets, and for the sides we use half double crochets. So 3 double crochets in that same stitch. Then I I chain 2 for the corner. I skip the next stitch and I work 3 more double crochets in the next one. So skip, going to the next one, 3 double crochet stitches here. Okay, let's see what we got so far. So I have 2 corners here and 1 side. And this is exactly how I work all around to create the square shape. If you need to see how we made the sides and the corners, feel free to rewind and go back here. See how we made this side. So we basically just skip the next 3, work 3 half double crochets, skip the next 3 and start the next corner. And for the 2 remaining corners, you can see how we made this corner here because the 2 remaining corners are going to be exactly the same way. So feel free to rewind and watch this part here as many times as you need to. The first one is only a little bit different because we start with that chain there, but otherwise it's the same too, okay? But these 2 side and this corner are the same way as the remaining sides and corners. So go ahead, work all around your square and then meet me back here. I have worked all around, and as we can see, now my granny square actually looks like a square. And I'm just gonna go ahead and close this round. So now if I have counted my stitches correctly, I should have 1, 2, and 3 stitches here before this first corner. And I slip stitch right here. I like to go on the first stitch there on the outside edge. But of course, you can close your round your way. And I'm going to fasten off here because I'm going to switch color. So I am going to make my last 2 rounds with this really pretty, I think it's called almond color, but kind of this beige pinkish color. So I'll fasten off there and I'm gonna change to a new color. All right, I'm going to attach this new color. So again, I attach with the slip knots. You can of course keep going with the same background color if you don't want to switch. So I'll start with the slip knot and I attach my yarn to one of these corner spaces. If you're not switching color here, make a couple of slip stitches here into the stitches on the outside edge and into this corner space so that you can start your round from this corner. Because if you're not switching color, you're currently here where you close the round. So if you need to, make a couple of slip stitches there. So I'm gonna start right here. Pull that yarn tail tight. And I'm going to chain 2. And now for this last 2 rounds, all I'm doing here is creating granny stitches all around. So clusters of double crochet stitches into the spaces between the previous round's clusters. And in the corners, I'll do 2 clusters separated by a chain 2 there for the corner. So if you've made granny squares before, this is going to be super easy for you. So I chain 2 stitches there, and that counts as my first double crochet. So I work 2 more double crochet stitches for this corner cluster. My first corner cluster for this corner. I chain 2 for the corner, and then I work 3 more double crochets into that same corner space. So this round and the next round are super easy compared to the previous one, because with the previous round we had to be counting those stitches all the time to make sure that we place those clusters in the right stitches. But now we don't have to do any of that. So after I complete my corner there, I'm just gonna move straight into that space there and create 3 double crochets there. Also no need for half double crochets since we already have this nice square shape for our granny square. So just granny stitches into these spaces. Here another one, so 3 double crochet stitches into this space. All right, there we go. There's my side with 2 clusters, and then I'm gonna make my next corner into this corner space. So 3 double crochet, chain 2 for the corner, and 3 double crochet into that same corner space. There we go. So this is how I work all around. Just clusters of double crochets into each one of those spaces, and in the corners 2 clusters separated by a chain 2. So feel free to go ahead, work all around your square and meet me back here. I have worked all around again. This square, by the way, would be really cute like this, but I'm going to add one more round to it. So I'll close my round here with a slip knot into that with a slip stitch here into that first stitch there on the outside, and then I go into the next stitch and slip stitch there and into the corner space and slip stitch there, so I can start my round right here. And I start again by chaining 2, which counts as my first double crochet. I work 2 more double crochets for this cluster. I chain 2 for the corner and 3 double crochets into the same corner space. And there's my first corner for this round. And now I'll just work around the square exactly the same way I did with the previous round. So just clusters of double crochet into these spaces. There we go. So clusters of double crochet into all of those spaces, and then in the corners we'll do 2 clusters of double crochets separated by a chain 2. So go ahead and work all around your square and then meet me back here. All right, I have worked all around again, and this is my final round, so I can just go ahead and close my round. I slip stitch there again into that first stitch there on the outside edge, chain 1, and fast enough. And here is my White Hawthorn Blossom Granny Square for Missouri. Now, I still have to weave in the rest of those ends, so most of them I took care of as I went, but I still have some that I need to finish weaving in, so I'm going to do that and then block this square. But otherwise, I am all done. I really hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. If you are posting pictures of your White Hawthorn Blossom Granny Square on Instagram, please tag my Instagram account. It's Wildflower and Stitch. Thanks again so much for watching. Please subscribe to my channel, leave me a comment, like this tutorial, share with a crochet friend. All of those things do help me a lot, and I really appreciate it. Thanks so much again, and I will see you next time. Take care.